ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaskar, dear friends. Now I'm starting my fifth video about the book The Final Talks by Annamalai Swami. So, the video starts with Annamalai Swami says, you stumble around in the darkness of your mind, not knowing that you have a torch in your hand. That light is the light of the self. Switch it on and leave it on, and you will never stumble again. See, here, stumble means here. We are going away from the path of spirituality and fall into the grip of worldly affairs. That is the meaning. You are all here because there is a desire in you to realize the self. This desire does not arise randomly or accidentally in some people and not in others. It is there because of the punyas you have accumulated from previous births. Punyas that may have come from meditation, charitable works, and so on. See, according to our Hindu beliefs, all worldly deeds, our education, knowledge of physics, chemistry, biology, geology, and all. This is secular knowledge, and this knowledge is pertains to our body. When we die, this knowledge is it becomes non-existent. But the spiritual sadhanas, what we have been doing, it will be carried forward in our next birth. So, when we die, where we stops, where we leave our sadhana, from there on, it will start in the next birth. So, that is the belief, and it is correct. See, some people are not at all interested in spirituality. They are very uh, rowdy. Some people are very peaceful mind. Some people are helpful. Some people are, very rough type. So this is all due to our previous birth sanskaras, subtle impressions embedded in our chitta, in our subconscious mind. So this is there. These punyas will manifest as a desire for freedom, for a desire to do earnest sadhana, a desire to find a good teacher in whose presence the truth will be taught and revealed. If someone is destined to be jnani in this life, it means that it has come to this final birth with a mountain of punyas to his credit. These punyas will take him to a real guru, to a real satsang, and in this environment he will do sadhana and achieve the goal. If one if one does not have this mountain of punyat from the past, there will be no desire for freedom, no desire to look for a guru who can deliver it. Such a person may meet a guru, and that guru may even give him good advice, but the determined resolve to put that advice into effect will not be there. The fierce determination to succeed and the discrimination that allows one to ignore worldly and entanglements only arise in those who have accumulated these punyas. Other people may hear the words of truth, but although they accept that they are true, the inclination to act on them will not be there. Wet wood does not catch the fire easily, but if you dry it for a long time in the sun, it will be much more combustible. Other materials such as camphor, petrol, kerosene, and gunpowder will ignite as soon as they are touched by a flame. Devotees can be classified in the same way. Some ignite as soon as they meet a guru or hear the truth for the first time. Others need a period of drying out before they are ready to catch fire. Those who are damp or wet can dry themselves out by sadhana, by having a strong determination to be aware of the self at all times. Self is readily available all the time, but we cannot be aware of it or even put our attention on the thought of it because our vasanas are continuously leading our interest and attention in other directions. That's why it is so important to have the awareness. I am not the mind, I am the self. You have forcibly to drag your wandering attention back to the self. Each time it shows an interest in going anywhere else, don't be interested in the words that the mind is serving up for you. It is putting them there to tempt you into a stream of thoughts that will take you away from the self. You have to ignore them all and focus on the light that is shining within. When I was serving Bhagwan in the 1930s and 40s, I obeyed chattering mind trying to lead me astray. I ignored the words and advice of everyone else in the ashram and kept all my attention on Bhagwan and his instructions to me. Even Chinna Swami had to concede finally that I was following the correct course. One day he came up to me and said, "You are not listening to my words or carrying out my instructions. You are only paying attention to Bhagwan's order." This determination could only be a result of all the punas you have accumulated in many previous lives. If there is no external light such as Bhagwan to guide you, you have to look within to find the self. You will know you will not benefit from looking anywhere else, from doing anything else, or from listening to any other device. Walking round and round a temple, doing rituals to a deity, other activities like these will not bring you any nearer to the self. The pujas, the tapas, the rituals, these are just for beginners. Meditation is the syllabus in a higher class. We need not waste our time by indulging in the activities of the infant class again and again. Here in this class, I ask you to put all your attention, all your interest on realizing the final teaching. I am not the body or the mind, I am self. All is the self. This is Bhagwan's final teaching. Nothing more needs to be added to it. Keep good company while you pursue this knowledge, and all will be well. Question. I know that listening to the Guru and believing his words is important. When he says, "You are the self, the world is not real," and so on, I can accept that what he says is true, but my belief in the truth of those words does not seem to make it my experience. Annamalai Swami. You must believe the Guru and you must also believe your own experience because the Guru is not telling you to add another belief to your mind. He is instead telling you to look at your own experience of yourself and in doing so disregard everything else. There is a story that Ramatirth used to tell. A man who was a little mad lived in a small village with his wife. His friends liked to tease him and make fun of him because they all thought he was stupid. One day, one of them said, "We have some bad news for you. Your wife has become a widow." He believed them and started crying out in grief, "My wife has become a widow. My wife has become a widow." Some of the people he passed on the street laughed at him and said, "Why are you mourning? You are very much alive. How can your wife be a widow if you yourself are alive to complain about it?" "My closest friends have told me this," he replied, "and I trust them. They are very reliable people. If they are saying that my wife has become a widow, it must be true." We would think that a man who behaved like this was utterly stupid because he chose to believe the words of others instead of his own experience. But are we any better? We believe on the basis of indirect information provided by the senses that we are the body. The experience of I am of the self is present in all of us, but when the mischievous senses gang up on us and try to make us believe something that is patently untrue, we believe them and ignore our indirect experience. Then we grieve about our state, lamenting, "I am bound, I am unenlightened, I am not free." And even when the Guru comes along and says, "You are the self, you are free," why do you insist on believing this misinformation that the mischievous senses are giving you? Still, you do not believe the truth. You tell him, "The senses have always given me reliable information in the past. I have learned to trust them. What they tell me must be true." And so you go on giving and complaining even when your direct experience and the words of the Guru agree with each other and reveal the truth. Question put to Annamalai Swami: "You are saying that I should listen to the Guru because what he says is the truth of who I am?" Annamalai Swami replies, "You should trust the Guru because his interest is in showing you the truth. He may occasionally say things that are not true, but he will say them only because he knows his words will push you in the right direction." I once heard a story that illustrates this. A rich man used to meditate once in a while. He had a guru, an enlightened man, who used to tell him, "You are not the mind or the body, you are the self. Always abide as the self." The man would listen attentively, but neither his meditation nor his guru's words had much of an effect on him. One day he approached his teacher and said, "You have been telling me for years that I am not the mind and the body and that I am the self. I believe it and I meditate on this, but I don't see any changes in myself. This must be a very difficult technique because I don't seem to be making any progress with it." The Guru said, "Let me look at your palm. I may be able to see something that is more suitable to you." After examining the disciple palm, the Guru's face dropped. "This is very bad. You should have put in more effort earlier in your life. I can see that you only have about 1 week to live. There is not much that can help you now." The disciple was shocked. He went home thinking, "All my wealth and businesses are useless to me now. I put too much time into them and not enough into my spiritual practice. There is nothing I can do now, but I can at least spend my last few days meditating." He went home and told his wife, "My life is coming to an end. My guru has warned me that this is my final week. I am going to spend my last few days meditating alone. Please tell my friends and relatives that I don't want to be disturbed. After a few days, his guru came to see how he was getting on. How is the meditation going? He asked. Your wife tells me that you have done nothing else for days. Gurudev, there is no one left to meditate. I have found the peace you have been talking about all these years. The Guru knew that this man would never focus full time on realizing the self because he was too caught up with his family and his business affairs. By making him think that his death was imminent, he made him concentrate on what was real and important. And it worked. This is not just a story, it is a tactic that will work for anyone. If you can withdraw energy from your worldly attachments and instead focus full time on the self, you will soon get results. If you are having trouble with your enthusiasm for sadhana, just tell yourself, I may be dead in 7 days. Let go of all the things that you pretend are important in your daily life and instead focus on the self for 24 hours a day. Do it and see that what happens. Question. It is not possible for some of us to make this kind of commitment. We have work to do, responsibilities in the world. Annamalai Swami replies. Sadhaks should only work enough to maintain the body. Try to avoid unnecessary activities. Less work is good. Devote yourself to your sadhana all the time. You dissipate your desire for the self by undertaking all kinds of useless activities that waste your time and lead to attachments. You think that your life is endless and that you can put off meditation till a later date. With this kind of attitude, you will die filled with regrets, not filled with peace. If you have to engage in activity to support yourself or your family, then do it, but always be aware of the self while you work. While you are doing that work, keep your thoughts 100% on the self. You are what you think you are. You become what you think. If you think of the self all the time, that is what you will become. If you live and die with the thoughts of work and family, you will be reborn in a place with more work and more family business to worry about. Question. What do you think of the common belief that a person's final thoughts determine his next birth? Annamalai Swami, a rich man who was very involved in his worldly affairs, was dying in his bed. He called to his wife, Where is my oldest son? She replied, He is standing beside you at the head of the bed. The wife, the wife was a meditative woman and she also knew that her husband was about to die. Don't worry about worldly affairs at this time, she advised. Relax peacefully into the self. That is the most important thing at this time. The husband had other things in his mind. Where is my second son? He asked. He is also beside the bed. Just try to keep quiet. Then where is my youngest son? Demanded the man. I also need to know where is he. He is here in the room with you. We are all here with you. So who is looking after our shop if everyone is here? Asked the dying man, and a few seconds later he passed away. This is how it is in life. If you spend your life with worldly thoughts, these will be the thoughts that fill your mind at the moment of your death. But if your life is devoted to sadhana, to attaining an inner peace, then at the moment of your death, this will be the state that you die in. Question. Is fasting beneficial? I have heard that thoughts diminish when one restricts one's food. Annamalai Swami. This may happen, but one should be careful not to take it to extreme lengths. Bhagwan said that sattvic food in moderate quantities was the best external aid for sadhaks. Starving oneself will not produce long-term benefits. Bhagwan also advised that we should starve the mind of thoughts rather than starve the body of food. We need to keep the body in good health in order to good sadhana. Depriving it of food and making it weak is not a step in the right direction. One of Bhagwan's devotees, Lakshmana Sharma, was a great advocate of naturopathy and fasting. He was a good devotee who wrote an excellent commentary on Ulladu Narpadu. Bhagwan gave him many lessons on this work, and Lakshmana Sharma's commentary incorporated the explanation that Bhagwan himself gave. During the 1940s, a boy of about 12 years of age came from London. A bomb blast had affected his hearing. Lakshmana Sharma wanted to treat him through naturopathy. Usually, this involves going on a fast, although there are several other aspects to the treatment as well. The boy was put on a fast of several days, but unfortunately, in this case, there was no improvement. The fasting treatment was extended, but the boy became weaker and weaker. Eventually, he became so weak he died. Right till the end, the boy was expecting that this treatment would cure him, but in the end, it brought about his death. These treatments have to be taken careful. These treatments have to be taken carefully. There are many people who will not be benefited by them. So we should make sure that we eat regularly. Annamalai Swami replies, we should not force ourselves to eat if we are not hungry. Eat food when you feel hungry. Food always tastes better if you have an appetite for it. Eating food at times directed by others is far less satisfactory if we take food at times when we have an appetite for it. We won't get sick. This is not just my advice. I, Avyar, a great Tamil saint, gave this advice in one of our poems, and Thiruvalluvar, another of our great poet saints, wrote, if you take your food only when you are hungry, you won't get sick. If you live like this, you will never have to go out in search of a medicine. Question. I want to ask Swamiji a question. I want to relax more into the present and surrender to Bhagwan's will. But I am not sure that this is really within my power. In Swamiji's book, talk number 5, Swamiji gave this answer. According to one's prarabdha, the efforts that are destined to happen will arise in one's mind. This is an extremely significant remark for me. As I understand it, all the activities that happen in this world happen according to Bhagwan's will. But the thoughts that instigate the actions also seem to come from Bhagwan and are also predetermined. Annamalai Swami replies, yes, everything comes from Bhagwan. All our activities play themselves out as a manifestation of the divine will. Our karma is part of this destiny. Question, okay, but I would still like to relax in the present and surrender to Bhagwan's will. I find that throughout the day thoughts are coming up. A thought comes up, I want to realize the self. I remind myself, here and now I am the self. This desire does not come from the self because the self has no need of realizing itself. So this must just be my vasanas coming up and I will ignore this thought. I cannot help this particular sequence of thoughts arising because Swami has said that these thoughts manifesting in that particular order is Bhagwan's will, my destiny. I might think that I am choosing a particular option or not, but that choice ultimately seems to be incorporated in my destiny. As I watch these thoughts arise, I feel that there is nothing I can do to end them, excuse them, execute them, or indulge in them. I can surrender and watch them, but it does not seem that I can do anything more than that. Annamalai Swami, your thoughts arise on a moment to moment basis because of your vasanas, but it is a mistake to think that you can do nothing about them. You can be interested in them or you can ignore them. If you show interest in them, they will persist and you will get caught up in them. If you ignore them and keep your attention on the source, they will not develop. And when they don't develop, they disappear. In Who Am I? Bhagwan compared this process to laying seeds to a fruit. If you cut off one by one the heads of the thoughts as they come out of the fruit of the mind, sooner or later these will be none left. The way to do this is by self inquiry. As each thought rises, you ask yourself, to whom does this thought appear? If you are vigilant in doing this, the forest of thoughts will lessen and lessen until there are none left. When the thoughts have gone, mind will sink into its source and experience that source. Question. I want to understand this process of ignoring thoughts. Thoughts will arise. I want to realize the self. I have not realized the self, or I must do such and such a practice to realize the self. I realize that these are all desires, all vasanas, so I say to myself, I am the self. Here and now, I am the self. As Swamiji says, this seems to stop the flow of thoughts for a while. I try to hold on to the I thought as Swamiji recommends, but I don't seem to have any real control over it. I still feel that whether I succeed or not is Bhagwan's will, something that is not within my control. I feel helpless. I remember that whenever the mind moves, it is on a wild goose chase, that it is chasing phantoms that don't exist. So I remember Swamiji's advice and remind myself, I am the self here and now. It helps, but not for long. Thoughts still come up again. Annamalai Swami, suppose you are walking down a busy road. You encounter all kinds of people doing all kinds of things. Little conversations are going on in one place. Perhaps workmen are digging a hole somewhere. Inside a store, a customer may be arguing about the price of some goods, while in the middle of the road there may be a crowd of people congregating around an accident victim. None of this is your business, but there is always a possibility that you will get interested in some or all of these activities and forget the reason why you are out on the street yourself. Don't get excited by anything you see and hear. Just walk steadily towards your destination. Your vasanas are all the side shows in your head that can drag your attention away from your main business, which is being aware of the self. If you have no interest in them, you will walk straight to your goal. If something temporarily distract your attention, bring yourself back by asking yourself, who is interested in all this? Who is getting interested in this distraction? This will deflect the distracting desire and it will bring you back to an awareness of your true purpose. Remember, nothing that happens in the mind is you and none of it is your business. You don't have to worry about thoughts that rise up inside you. It is enough that you remember that the thoughts are not you. Question that goes for all kinds of thoughts, Annamalai Swami. Whatever kind of thought arises, have the same reaction. Not me, not my business. It can be a good thought or a bad thought. Treat them all the same way. To whom are these thoughts arising? To you. That means that you are not the thought. You are the self. Remain as the self and don't latch into anything that is not the self. Question. There is another thing that comes up for me. There is a desire for the earnest earnestness to remember the self all the time. The mind will latch on to this and think, I should meditate more, I should pay more attention to being in the present. Ideas such as these set off whole change of thoughts. Yet this still looks to me to be an effort by the ego to realize the self that is already here. In some ways, it seems to me to be another distraction. Annamalai Swami replies, if you remain as the self, no vasanas and no karma will touch or affect you. If you remain in the mind, thoughts of one sort or another will bother you all the time. Question. If I understand correctly, my karma is all the activities that my body has to undertake on this life. I can be a witness to it, but I cannot change it. If I pick up this glass that is in front of me, it happened because it was my karma to pick it up in this moment. I do not have a choice. Either I am destined to pick it up or I am not. Bhagwan said the same thing. When someone picked up a fan and asked if that act was destined from the moment he was born, Bhagwan said, yes, it was destined. Annamalai Swami, if the thoughts I should meditate or I should realize arise, ask yourself to whom are these thoughts arising? Why do you need to think about your body and your mind so much? If you are the light, there is no darkness. If you are the self, there is no thought, no body, and no mind to give you any trouble. Any number of thoughts may come, let them but remember all the time, I am the self. You are not the vasanas, you are not the thoughts, you are the self. Keep that awareness and don't worry too much about what is going on in your mind and what it means. Don't allow any identification to settle on you. Don't think I am sitting in Bhagwan's shrine. Don't think I am doing, I am acting, I am sitting. You are the self, not the body. Even your vasanas are the self. All is yourself. There are no distinctions, no differences in the self. Nothing is separate from the self. You cannot find a single atom, a single thought that is apart from the self. All is the self. But is there anything I can do to discover this? Is not all effort pointless if you everything that happens to me is predetermined? Annamalai Swami, all these doubts that are troubling you arise simply because you are enmeshed in the I am the body thought and all the confusing consequences that it brings. It is more productive to keep the awareness I am the self than to be analyzing the usefulness of effort. Sadhana, effort and practice and any idea you may have about them are concepts that can only arise when you believe that you are not the self and when you believe that you have to do something to reach the self. Even the sequence to whom has this thought come to me is based on ignorance of the truth. Why? Because it is verbalizing a state of ignorance. It is perpetuating an erroneous assumption that there is a person who is having troublesome thoughts. You are the self, not some make believe person who is having thoughts. If you remain in the self as the self, no harm can come to you. In that state, whatever comes to you will not be a problem. There is no duality when you remain as the self. No thoughts about what you should or should not do, and no thoughts about what can be done or what cannot be done. The main thing is not to go out of the self. When you have switched on the light, darkness cannot come, not even if you desire it. Question. Swamiji frequently says that we should meditate constantly to stay in the self. I find that I cannot meditate constantly. When I realize that I am not meditating, the mind tells me that I should do something to get back into the self. This is my real state, my actual condition. I cannot stay constantly in the self. Annamalai Swami says, when this thought I am not meditating or I am not in the self arises, just ignore it and go back to the self. When thoughts such as these arise, look at them and think, not me, not my business, and go back to the self. Don't waste energy on the thinking or evaluating how well or how badly you are doing in your meditation. Question. When attentiveness has been lost, when I realize that I am not in the present, that I am not meditating, the mind is inevitably distracted. The thought, the evaluation always comes, I am distracted. Annamalai Swami, whatever thoughts come, ignore them. You have to ignore anything that is connected to the body, mind, idea. Anything that is based on the notion that you are the mind or the body. If you can do this, the rising thought will not disturb or distract you. In a split second, it will run away. All thoughts are distractions, including the thought I am meditating. If you are the self, darkness will not overcome you. Whatever thoughts arise in that state won't affect you. Question. Is the ability to remember I am the self part of one's destiny? Annamalai Swami. If you are the self, no destiny will affect you. If you tear your shirt, does that mean that you are also torn? No. Something has happened to something that is not you. Similarly, the body and the mind will experience pleasure, happiness, misery, and so on, all according to the karma that has been brought into this life. But the self has no attachment, no detachment, no happiness, no unhappiness, and no karma. The body is not the self. The mind is not the self. The real I is the self, and nothing ever happened to or affects the self. Thoughts will come as long as the potential for them is inside you. Good thoughts, bad thoughts, they will all keep coming. There is nothing you can do about this flow, but at the same time, this flow of thoughts need not be a problem. Be the self, be the peace, that is your real nature, and it will not matter what comes up. Walk, eat, drink, sleep, meditate, but never think that you are the one who is doing these things. The thought that you are doing something is the thought that is poisoning your life. Because once you think that you are doing something, you will start to think that you need to be doing something else to put yourself in a better situation. You don't have to do anything to experience the nectar of the self. All you need to do is drop the idea that you are doing anything at all. You need to change your vision, your perspective. When you live in the mind and see the world outside you that is separate and apart from you, you will make plans, you will worry, you will have doubts such as the ones you have been telling me about today. These doubts keep coming up in your because you are not dwelling in the source, the substratum. In that place there is oneness, a oneness in which all distinctions, all separation is absent. If you abide as the self, you will see the world as the self. In fact, there will be no world at all. No world, no Maya, no mind, no distinctions of any kind. It is like the state of seeing only wood in the carved elephant, only threads in the dyed cloth. In that state of being and knowing the self, ideas of right and wrong, things to do and things to avoid doing will vanish. You will know that they were just mental concepts. In that state, you will know that mind is the self, bondage is the self, everything is the self. With that vision, nothing will bind you, nothing will cause you misery. The self may appear as the manifest world as different separate objects, but the underlying reality, the only real substance is the self in which they are all appearing and disappearing. Things and people may appear in this substratum and you may use them or interact with them, but your peace will never be disturbed. When you abide as the self, there is no one left to choose and decide. Life goes on automatically. You will pick up the things that are needed and not pick up the things that are not needed. What you pick up and what you don't pick up will not be a consequence of what you like or dislike. These preferences will not be there anymore. This perspective will be yours when you give up or cease to believe the idea I am different from the world. Giving up this thought is a great sadhana in itself. Abandoning this false idea will be enough to give you peace. When the thought is here, the world seems to be full of good people and bad people, all busily engaged in doing what appear you to be good things and bad things. When the thought is absent, you know them all to be your own self. In that state, you won't like them, dislike them, or judge them, or be aware of them as being other than your own self. This absence of likes, dislikes, and judgments will leave you in your original natural state of peace. Teeth and tongues are both parts of you, and they both function in harmony without fighting or struggling. When there is the knowledge that mind and self are one, there will be no fights, no struggles, and no attempts to judge or attain. To have this harmony, place the mind in the self and keep it there. This is the real meditation. However, until you reach this state in which there are no distinctions and preferences, you should use a little discrimination with regard to who and what you associate with. Avoid bad company and bad thoughts and try to keep the conviction that nothing is separate from you. During sleep, you have no likes and dislikes. Jnanis and babies manage this while they are awake. Baby mind is good. Jnani mind is good. I am the body mind is very, very bad. Question. It is a poisonous thought. Annamalai Swami replies, yes, yes, the I am the body thought is just as poisonous as a cobra. All is myself, all is the nectar of my own self. These are the great affirmations that counter the I am the body thought. Holding on to one of these sayings is the equal of millions of punyas. If we continuously meditate on the truth of these statements, if we hold on to the truth that they are poisoning towards countless punyas will accrue to us. There are many other mantras about none are useful as these. Ribhu Gita says, all is one, all is the self. This is the truth that you have to hold on to the real I. Nothing is foreign in the entire universe. If you know you are everything, there will be no desire to pursue some things and not others. Nothing will be liked more or less than anything else. Do you like or desire your arm more than your foot? When your body is the whole universe, likes, dislikes, and desires will be absent. Question. I know that the Jnani has no dislikes and no preferences, but I have to admit I am different. I have a strong desire to be in your presence. I believe that being here is doing me good, so I stay. Addressing the translator. Here I have a beautiful feeling that no one has loved me as he does. Annamalai Swami replies, drop the body mind idea and you will discover that you don't have any likes or dislikes. You don't think that your shirt is yourself. Similarly, the Jnani does not believe that he is his body or his mind. The Jnani understands that the body and the mind are enemy, animated by the self, but he also knows that he shines as the self, whether the body and mind are there or not. Without the self, the body and the mind can do nothing at all. You could not eat, sleep, speak, or do anything at all without the self. Keep your body in good condition if you want to, but don't ever believe that it is you. You can keep your car in good working order without ever believing that you are the car. Have the same attitude towards your body. You are not your car and you are not your body. Both will perish, but the self will continue because it is always there. When you identify with transient things that pass away or perish, you too will pass away and perish. But when you identify with the self, you will not pass any way or change in any way. The self has no birth, no death, no bondage, no misery, no youth, no old age, and no sickness. These are attributes of changing bodies and minds, not the self. Be the self, and none of these things will ever happen to you. Question. Ramana Maharshi told you to leave his ashram because you say he wanted you not to be attached to his form. You had already contacted the formless and you knew that Maharshi was not the form you saw in the ashram. It seems to me that the physical form is not that important. It seems to me that it is more important to find God, the self, in the heart. This leads me to the question of how important it is to have a physical master. In order to realize the self, do we need to have a physical master? For myself, I am beginning to feel more and more that it has nothing to do with a physical form, but sometimes I have doubts. Am I just fooling myself by believing that I can contact the self within without the aid of an external physical master? Annamalai Swami says, if you go to a physical guru and ask him how to realize the self, he will probably tell you that you are already the self and that you should just hold on to the self that you already are. If you can manage that, you will be with the true guru all the time and you will not need the physical form of the guru to keep reminding you of who you are. In that state, you will be living with Bhagwan, staying as the self, holding on to the real I at all times. If you go to the physical form of the Guru and ask about the self realization, you will not be told about the importance of the physical form of the Guru. You will be told to hold on to the real I. You will be told that you should not fall into the trap of believing that the Guru is just a body. The Guru is inside you as the self and outside you as a physical form that has manifested in the self. If you follow the advice that the physical Guru gives, you will discover that the inner and outer Gurus are one and the same. However, very few people can manage this by themselves. Question: is there still work to be done after the self is reached and experienced? Annamalai Swami says, initially, abidance in the self may not be firm and irreversible. Vigilance may be needed at first to maintain it. There is a verse from Kavalla Navanita that Bhagwan often quoted. It speaks of the need for vigilance even after the self has been experienced for the first time. In the verse, the disciple is speaking to his Guru. Lord, you are the reality remaining as my innermost self, ruling me during all my countless incarnations. Glory to you who have put on an external form in order to instruct me. I do not see how I can repay your grace for having liberated me. Glory, glory to your holy feet. The Guru replies to stay fixed in the self without the three kinds of obstacles: ignorance, uncertainty, and wrong knowledge. Obstructing your experience is the highest return to you can render me. The Guru knows that without vigilance, an initial experience of the self may slip away. Question: why is this initial experience not enough? Annamalai Swami, if vasanas are still there, they will rise up again and the experience will be lost. While they are there, there is always the possibility that we may again take unreal to be real. If we take the mirage to be real water, that is ignorance. Similarly, if we take the unreal body to be the self, that is also ignorance. As soon as ignorance comes, you must question it. To whom does the ignorance comes? A strong determination to pursue inquiry in this way will dissolve all doubts. By questioning who am I and by constantly meditating, one comes to the clarity of being. As long as vasanas continue to exist, they will rise and cover the reality of obscuring awareness of it as often as you become. So, why is this initial experience not enough? Annamalai Swami, if vasanas are still there, they will rise up again and the experience will be lost. While they are there, there is always the possibility that we may again take the unreal to be real. If we take the mirage to be real water, that is ignorance. Similarly, if we take the unreal body to be the self, that is also ignorance. As soon as ignorance comes, you must question it. To whom does this ignorance come? A strong determination to pursue inquiry in this way will dissolve all doubts. By questioning who am I and by constantly meditating, one comes to the clarity of the being. As long as vasanas continue to exist, they will rise and cover the reality, obscuring awareness of it. As often as you become aware of them, question to whom do they come? This continuous inquiry will establish you in your own self and you will have no further problem. When you know that the snake of the mind never existed, when you know that the rope of the reality is all that exists, doubts and fears will not trouble you again. Question: what is that brings maturity and growth in a person? How do the gunas change in such a way that the mind eventually becomes sattvic? Annamalai Swami. Self has no birth, no death, no sufferings, and no problems. It is the witness of all these phenomena, but it is untouched by them. All these experiences happen to the mind, and through numerous lives and mind lies, learn and matures. It takes a body and learns some lessons in that body. Then it takes another form, another body and learns something else. The mind goes on like this for innumerable lifetimes until finally it has learned enough to go back to its source, the self. Do the five seeds, the kosas, mature in this process? Do some of them mature or do all of them? Annamalai Swami replies, mind includes all the five kosas. Through many lifetimes, one can say that the kosas are maturing and growing, but realization ultimately has nothing to do with the mature mind or mature kosas. It is the state in which one transcends the five kosas and the mind. It is the state in which one finally understands that the mind, whether mature or immature, never really existed. Does the acquisition of spiritual knowledge make the mind mature? Annamalai Swami. The acquisition of knowledge belongs to the realm of education and not sadhana. Seeing everything as one is the true seeing, and controlling the five senses in the body is the true sadhana. They they must be controlled, and success in this endeavor is truly heroic. No traditional education can prepare you for this. Realizing the self is the true education. One of Mahatma Gandhi's disciples was educated to a very high level. He was also a pious man and a strict disciplinarian with himself. When he realized that all he wanted in life was self realization, he tore up all his academic certificates and threw them away. He knew that neither his education nor his worldly knowledge would help him. In fact, by doing this, he implied that his knowledge was a hindrance that had to be rejected. A proper education does not come from books, it comes from associating with jnanis. They alone can guide us and teach us properly. I served Bhagwan for 12 years. Looking back on those years, I can now say that just as you cannot get a proper formal academic education without attending school, one cannot get a true spiritual education without satsang with either with a jnani or with one's own self. Question. It is difficult for me to stay focused on the I thought, especially when I am in the middle of worldly activities. Is it enough to be aware of awareness of consciousness in general? Anamla Swami reply, if you are conscious of consciousness, there is no duality, everything is included in consciousness. Question. But is it enough to be aware of the awareness? Annamalai Swami, you are repeating the question, so I will repeat the answer. If you remain in this state of consciousness, there will be nothing apart from it. No problem, no misery, no question. Are you always in that state of consciousness? I find that when I am busy with activities, thoughts come up and I am no longer remembering myself. I am no longer focusing on consciousness. Annamalai Swami, I don't lose consciousness of the self because I don't get identify with the body and the mind. It is only in the state in which you identify with the body and the mind that problems arise. In deep sleep, we forget the body and the mind, but consciousness is still there. That same state is present now while you are awake. If you give up all your ideas about separateness, that will be enough. When those ideas have gone, you realize you are everything. Question. In the Ribhu Gita, it is mentioned that bad qualities and good qualities are both Brahma. Does that mean that we don't need care about good and bad qualities? In your real state, there is only consciousness. In deep sleep, no names and forms manifest in that consciousness, whereas in the dreaming and waking state they do. When you look at a piece of cloth, you notice its name and form attributes, the color, the design, the thickness, etc. But what you are really looking at is just threads. The underlying nature of consciousness, the equivalent of the threads in the cloth is peace. To abide knowingly as consciousness is to be deep, undisturbed peace, even though thoughts and activities may be determined. For it, when you see through the eyes of wisdom, there is one peace, no bondage or samsara touches even. Even to say that the self is peace is not quite correct. I call it peace, but really it is not something that can be described or defined by words. Good and bad qualities are ideas that manifest in the mind. In samsara, they are concepts that vanish when only this peace remains. When you are peace, when you are consciousness, all good qualities will manifest in you and through you, but you will not be aware of them as being good. You will not just be that. Question. The wheel of life manifestation, samsara, seems to continue whether one is established in that peace or not. Is there nothing in this manifestation that provides a key to peace? Annamalai Swami, if you understand the true nature of this wheel of life, this wheel that is giving everything so much alternating happiness and misery, this understanding will lead you to where there is no wheel, no change, no movement. This wheel is spinning in the substratum of the changeless self. If you take your position in the still peaceful center of the self, you will know simultaneously that the self is motionless peace. You will not know simultaneously that the self is motionless peace and that the spinning wheel is also the self. Question. Why is there a need to have this spinning wheel in the self? Why a need for manifestation at all? Anam Laishwan replies, this question is happening only in your mind. If you remain in the self as the self, the question will not arise. Whether you move your hand or keep it still, it is still a hand. Its nature is not changed in either case. Maya is the self, all is the self. You will give up all the distinctions. You will know this for yourself. That is all you need to do. Question. Why does the mind always go outwards instead of inwards? Anamala Ishwan, because we don't ask the question, why does the mind go outwards instead of inward? This question arises because the nature of happiness is not properly understood. People are always looking for it in the wrong places and by doing the wrong activities. You begin with the impression, which is really a misunderstanding, that happiness is something that can be found outside you, and furthermore, that you have to do something or go somewhere to reach it. This is your illusion, and it is your belief in this illusion that makes the mind search for happiness in the outside world. Even when you are told happiness is within you as your own self, look inward and find it. Still, you think that you have to do something or go somewhere to discover it. This is the power of Maya, all of illusion. This is like one fish in the sea asking another fish for direction to the ocean. When you are not aware that your glasses are resting on your nose, you may look for them all day, thinking that they are lost. As a consequence, you believe that they are an object to be found. Eventually, you realize that you were wearing them all the time. While the search was on, that which was being sought was in reality that through which the seeing was taking place. You were looking for an object that finally turned out to be the subject that was doing the seeing. So it is with the mind and the self. Mind sets up the notion that the self needs to be found and then proceeds to hunt for it as if it were some object that could be located in some interior place. This is as foolish as a man with a goat wrapped around his shoulder, spending his time wandering around looking for his goat and asking everywhere he meets where it might be. Question. You say that I am the self and that I don't even need to look inwards to discover it. I think that grace is needed to experience the truth of this statement, since effort of any kind seems to be counterproductive. Annamalai Swami replies, grace is always present, always available, but for it to be effective, one must be in a state to receive it and make full use of it. If you want to take a full cup of water from a lake, you have fully to immerse the cup first. If you want to fill your mind with grace, submerge it fully in the self. In that place, the grace will manifest in you as peace and happiness. Question. Does the mind die gradually or suddenly? Anamla showing you. One answer is, when the sun comes up, does darkness disappear suddenly or gradually? Bhagavan Speaking on this topic, once remarked, someone mistakes a rope hanging in the darkness for a snake. He then asks how many years it will take for the snake to die. This is a better answer. If the mind does not exist, it cannot die either quickly or slowly. So here ends the book. So thank you, dear, for listening with patience. Thank you so much. Please subscribe my channel, comment, share, and like the video. Thank you.